Someone mentioned anime sound effects in the comments, and I listened to a few examples, and the sound design is very interesting because a lot of the sound effects are extremely bass heavy and distorted. So that's definitely something I want to experiment a bit more with and look a bit more into. And the first thing that I did was to recreate those really heavily distorted bass drops. So I'm going to use Vital to create the basis for this, but you can easily create this with any synthesizer. Just gonna leave the default setting as it is here and just add 2 more oscillators and just change them to sine waves. And one of them I'm gonna pitch up 1 octave. Let's actually put a note in here. Try an F. And the only thing that I'm gonna do in the synthesizer here is I'm gonna create the pitch bend for our downer. So I'm just gonna use LFO1 for this, map it to the global voice transpose, and actually like around half an octave. I'll set this to envelope mode and make it 2 bars long. So now we're done in the synthesizer and we're just gonna add distortion onto this. So I'm just gonna, in this case, use Ableton's amp and just set this to dual mode and leave it as it is. And then a bit more distortion with our saturator here. Just gonna use the wave shaper and dial in the curve. Sounds good to me for a start. Now I'm just gonna use an EQ to boost the lows. And because we have phase randomization on in the synth, we are gonna get a different sound every time we trigger it. So just keep that in mind. And now this is our basic setup. And to get this really overdriven and heavily distorted sound, I'm actually just gonna duplicate this a few times. Depending on what kind of plugins you're using and how heavy you're distorting it, you might not have to duplicate this as often as I do now, but just play around with it until you find the right amount of duplicates. Let's maybe just start with 5 of these. So already sounds interesting, but I think we can go a bit further. So this is pretty much the sound, but we can also process this a bit more. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to resample this to audio. And now I'm going to do the same without all of the distortion. Pretty much just get a normal downer. I'm actually going to deactivate this oscillator here. So we just have the sine waves. Now we can layer them together. Also use an EQ and a compressor and maybe some more saturation on both of them. And now we can really increase all of the distorted effect again by pushing the sub bass that we have here into this. So now with the volume, you can easily control how extreme you want this effect to be and how bass heavy you actually want it to be. And with the EQ, you could do some small movements. And so if you make a few versions of this, maybe with different distortion plugins, you can get a lot of really heavy bass drops that are great layers for this type of sound effects or to just use on their own.